My name is Victoria Harmon. I am 34 years old, and for most of my life, I believed that being enough was never going to be enough. I was born into a family that had nothing. Literally nothing. I remember winters where we shared one blanket between 3 people. I remember my mother counting coins on the kitchen table at midnight, her lips moving silently, like a prayer she knew wouldn't be answered. I remember promising myself that someday, somehow, I would never count coins again. And I kept that promise. By the time I was 26, I had built my first company from a $400 loan and a secondhand laptop. By 29, I had 3. By 32, my name was in business magazines. My net worth had crossed a number that still feels unreal. When I say it out loud, billions with a B. But here's the thing nobody tells you about success. It is the loneliest country in the world. You sit at the top of a mountain you climbed with bleeding hands. And there is no one beside you to watch the sunrise. Every man who came into my life came with a smile too bright and eyes that scanned the room before they looked at me. I learned to read that look. I called it the inventory look, the quiet calculation behind warm words. They weren't seeing Victoria. They were seeing the empire. So I stopped believing. Not in love exactly. Just in the possibility that love and Victoria Harmon could ever exist in the same sentence. Then my mother called. She had found someone. She said he was different. She said, and I remember her exact words, "This one looks at you like you're the reason the sun bothers to rise." His name was Daniel Whitmore, 36, handsome in that quiet, unhurried way. An architect. Not rich, not poor, just steady, like a lighthouse on a calm coast. Our first meeting was arranged over Sunday dinner at my parents' home. I walked in expecting to feel nothing. I had built very good walls by then. Tall ones, reinforced. But Daniel, he didn't try to climb them. He just stood at the base and talked to me like I was a person. Not a portfolio. Not a prize. He asked me what I was afraid of. On a first meeting, who does that? I told him I was afraid of winter. He laughed and said he was afraid of silence. We talked for 4 hours that night. My mother fell asleep on the couch. My father winked at me from across the room, and for the first time in years, I felt something loosen inside my chest. Like a knot I had forgotten was there. We began seeing each other. Slowly at first, then completely. He would show up at my office with coffee and no agenda. He never asked about my finances, never brought up investments or board meetings or what my company was worth. He talked about sunsets and architecture and the way old cities remember their history through their buildings. He was poetry in a world full of spreadsheets. 6 months later, he proposed, not with a grand gesture, not with cameras or a crowd. Just the 2 of us on a rooftop he had quietly arranged, fairy lights strung overhead like a sky we had borrowed for the evening. He held out a ring, modest, beautiful, chosen, and said, "I don't want your world, Victoria. I just want to be in it." I said yes before he finished the sentence. I felt like a woman standing in a field after years of drought, finally feeling rain on her face. I was happy. Genuinely, completely, terrifyingly happy. And that is exactly when everything began to unravel. It started small. The way dangerous things always do. A canceled dinner. A distracted look. Texts he angled away from me. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself I was so unused to love that I was looking for reasons to lose it. I was self-sabotaging. I was afraid of good things. I silenced my instincts with excuses. But instincts don't go silent forever. One evening, I came home early from a business trip. My flight landed ahead of schedule. I didn't call ahead, I wanted to surprise him. We had been distant for weeks, and I thought, maybe a quiet night together would reset something between us. I walked into my own home and found Daniel on the phone in my study. He hadn't heard me come in. He was speaking in a low, hurried voice. I caught only fragments at first, but fragments are sometimes enough. She doesn't suspect anything. Once we're married, it's a different legal structure entirely. Trust me, it's worth the patience. I stood in the hallway outside that door for what felt like a century. The world went very quiet. You know that feeling when your heart understands something your mind refuses to process? Like standing on ice and hearing the first crack beneath your feet. I stepped back. went to the kitchen, sat down, and I made a decision. I would not confront. Not yet. I would watch. I would learn. I would understand exactly what was happening before I acted. Because I had built a billion-dollar empire on one skill above all others: the ability to gather information before making a move. I became very still, like a lake just before a storm. Before I tell you what I discovered next, and trust me, what comes next will shake you. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and drop your country in the comments below. I want to know where in this world people understand this kind of pain. You'd be surprised how many of us are out there carrying the same quiet wounds. Now back to that lake before the storm. Over the next 2 weeks, I quietly hired a private investigator. I felt sick doing it. It felt like a betrayal of my own hope. But hope without truth is just a beautiful lie. And I had lived inside enough of those. What the investigator found? Daniel had a business partner, a man he had known since university. His name was Marcus. Marcus had debt, crushing, catastrophic debt from a failed real estate venture. And Marcus had a plan. Daniel was the plan. The idea was this: Daniel would marry me. Once married, certain asset structures could be legally challenged, certain joint holdings created, certain loopholes accessed. It wasn't just about stealing money. It was a long, calculated strategy, patient, disguised as love. I read the investigator's report alone in my office at 2 a.m. I did not cry. I think I had no tears left for this kind of thing. Or maybe. The grief was too large for tears. It sat in my chest like a stone dropped into still water. Not violent, just heavy and sinking and changing everything beneath the surface. The man who said he didn't want my world had wanted nothing else from the very beginning. Now I have to tell you about someone else. Someone I had almost forgotten to notice. His name was Elliot Chase, Daniel's best friend. The quiet one at dinner parties who listened more than he spoke. The one who always looked slightly uncomfortable when Marcus was in the room. I had never paid him much attention. He seemed like background, pleasant, forgettable background. But the night everything fell apart, it was Elliot who came to me. Not Daniel. Not Marcus, Elliot. He appeared at my door at 10 p.m, 3 days before my wedding. He looked like a man who had argued with himself for a very long time and finally lost. His eyes were tired. His jaw was tight. He said, "Victoria, I need to tell you something. And I need you to know that telling you this is the hardest thing I've ever done. Because Daniel is my oldest friend. But I cannot watch this happen to you." He told me everything. Not just what the investigator had found. More. He had known for months. He had fought with Daniel, threatened to walk away, begged him to stop. Daniel had laughed and said I would never find out. That I was too trusting. That successful women are always too trusting because they never believe someone would target them specifically. Elliot had carried this like a secret disease. And finally, it had eaten through him completely. He sat across from me and said, "You are one of the most remarkable people I have ever been near, and you deserve someone who knows that without needing to be reminded. I'm sorry I didn't come sooner. I'm sorry I let friendship blind me this long." I looked at this man, this quiet, complicated, decent man, and something moved in me that I cannot fully name. Not romantic, not yet. Something deeper than that. Something like recognition, like two people seeing each other clearly for the very first time. I called off the wedding. Publicly, directly, without drama, without performance. I sent Daniel a single message. It said, "I know, all of it. Do not contact me again." He tried, of course. Long messages about love and mistake and misunderstanding. Then lawyers. Then silence. The silence came once his own. Lawyer explained what exposing this scheme could mean for him legally. The silence came very quickly after that. Marcus disappeared entirely, the way opportunists do when the opportunity is gone. And I was left standing in the rubble of something I had believed was real. But here is what I want to tell you. Here is the part I need you to hear. The rubble wasn't only destruction. There were things in that rubble I had thought were buried. My own voice. My own clarity. The part of me that had whispered something is wrong and been silenced by hope. She was still there. She had waited patiently. She had kept watch. I found her again in the wreckage, and she was stronger than I remembered. Elliot and I became friends first, slowly, carefully, like two people learning to walk after an injury, aware of every step, grateful for every moment of steadiness. He never pushed, never declared. He simply showed up, and for conversations, for quiet evenings, for the kind of presence that asks nothing and offers everything. 6 months later, on a Tuesday evening with no fairy lights and no planned moment, he looked at me across the kitchen table and said, "I think I've been in love with you since the night you told Daniel you were afraid of winter." I laughed. And then I cried. And then I laughed again. Because that is what real love feels like, I think. Not the performance of it, not the grand gesture. Just two people finally saying what has always been true. I did not say yes to Elliot because I needed saving. I had saved myself. I said yes because choosing him felt like choosing peace. Like coming home to a house you didn't know you'd missed. And here are the things this journey burned into me, permanently, powerfully. Silence your instincts at your own risk. The body knows. The gut knows. That quiet whisper that something is wrong. It is not anxiety. It is not self-sabotage. It is wisdom. Learn to listen to it before the cost of ignoring it becomes too high. The person who stays quiet in the background is often the one paying the most attention. We fall for the loud ones, the charming ones, the ones who take up space and make everything feel like a movie. But look for the one who listens when you speak. Who remembers what you said 3 weeks ago? Who is uncomfortable when someone treats you poorly? That is where real love lives. Being broken open is not the same as being broken. What Daniel did cracked something in me, but cracks are how light enters. The breaking apart of that false love made room for something real. Do not be afraid of the painful seasons. They are clearing ground for what is meant to grow. My name is Victoria Harmon. I am 34 years old. I'm worth billions by the world's measure. But the thing I am most proud of is that I did not let the wrong love teach me that love itself was wrong. I stood in the rubble. I found my voice. I chose wisely, finally, completely, peacefully. And today, I wake up beside a man who looks at me like I am enough. Not my empire, not my net worth. Not my name, me, just me. And after 34 years of searching, that is worth more than everything else combined. Have you ever faced a betrayal like this? Someone who wore love like a costume, while wanting something else entirely? Tell me in the comments. Your story matters. And if this video touched something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. The next video is waiting for you, and trust me, that story will stay with you even longer than this one.